Hello, friends, welcome back to Sorry What. As promised yesterday, here's part 2 of our story. If you haven't listened to the first part yet, I'm linking it, so make sure to watch that first, so you don't miss any part of the story. Ready? Well, let us begin. So, you didn't enjoy yourself, sexually, with your daddies. She cringed at that last word, but gamely carried on. Don't you see? Yes, I called them daddies on my page, but really, they were all you, weren't they? So, even if I did enjoy myself, I was enjoying myself with you. Any memories I had would be about doing it with you. Like that multiverse thing in those comic book movies you like. I could add memories of doing it with a younger or older you to the wonderful memories I have of doing it with you now. And when you thought back on those encounters, perhaps while nursing the child one of those alternate me's planted in you, it would always be the real me you'd be thinking of. She couldn't avoid another grimace at my stabbing words, but carried on with, yes, always of you. I turned my head and looked resolutely at Attorney Dewitt. She raised her eyebrows slightly in question. I nodded just as subtly. She reached over for another folder, a folder outlined with a red border, the nuclear option folder. As I spoke, Cully slowly withdrew a series of photographs and laid them side by side in front of Maeve and her attorney. And because you were doing things this way for me, to spare my feelings, I said, I would never have to wonder, while we made love, if you were actually thinking about being with one of these other men, because this was just a sperm donor exercise. The 8x10 color prints Cully laid out had been taken from both the front and rear cameras in the house, plus one I'd snuck in from the video I'd shot while snooping the place Friday night. The first 3 featured only Maeve's face, blown up to fill the whole frame. They were somewhat grainy, but there was no mistaking the ecstasy of her face. Because it was just about getting impregnated, I droned on, I wouldn't have to worry about you remembering tremendous taboo loss or thinking about experiencing them again. I noticed my wife's complexion shifting from gray to green as a picture of her back arching seemingly to the breaking point joined the lineup. I would never have to fear the day when you asked me to put on a military uniform for some roleplay or maybe to get an exciting tattoo. A photo of the boy soldier's uniform blouse being pulled open while Maeve licked one of his nip-nops was followed by a close-up of elaborate black and orange stripes going all the way across a man's lower back. I would never have to doubt that I was able to satisfy all your desires. The final photo was Maeve on her knees in the living room, a look of manic glee in her eyes, as she grinned hugely at 9 inches of tiger tail, standing straight and tall in her 2 tiny-looking hands. Maeve's face blanched as she finally saw her actions through my eyes. She barely made it to the waste can by the conference room door before vomiting. Epilogue. Our house on 3rd Street sold quickly, and although we'd owned it less than 2 years, it had appreciated just enough in value for us to be able to pay off the mortgage and cover some of our relocation costs. I'd left Frank's condo for an apartment more convenient to work, while Maeve had returned to Bumdick after all. I guess the idea of running into me at Starbucks was more than she could handle. However, she had been able to move into a small apartment up there, rather than her childhood bedroom. She was not pregnant. My ex had also found a decent job that covered a reasonable lifestyle in such a low-cost area. I was glad, because while the alimony payments I'd been making for 5 months were a real strain for me, I was glad to know that she wouldn't suddenly become destitute when they stopped after the 6th and final month. Sure, she'd brought this disaster down on both of us, and thoughts of her mad betrayal still easily twisted my guts, but she had been the love of my life, and I had no doubt that her remorse and regrets were authentic and just as deeply felt as my own. Her last letter said she was still hoping that we might reconcile. Not bloody likely, as a Brit friend of mine would say. But still, shedding my anger and despair, actively working at it, was a major component of my own ongoing therapy. Frank and Kelly had been right, regular counseling had indeed gotten me to a point where I no longer thought that I was a tremendous failure whose life was basically over, except for another 40 or 50 years of dull grey monotony. One proof of my reviving sense of aliveness was a very interesting double date that Frank asked me to join from one of his risque dating sites. A 50-year-old widow and her 25-year-old daughter had wanted to fulfill a very taboo fantasy, and after seeing their profile photos, I found that I was more than ready, willing, and able to help out. The fact that the women were black and swapping with 2 white guys was part of their taboo, made me feel very good that I wasn't looking for a surrogate for Maeve. The months following my divorce also saw a strange flurry of odd accidents and crimes in our city. The boss of Frank's ex-wife Tracy, the man with whom she cheated on my best friend back then and who she was still cheating with afterwards, with the boss's wife as the victim, had a terrible accident with life-changing consequences. The asshole apparently had a regular routine of running on trails through a heavily wooded area on the edge of town. It seems that one day, a large branch broke loose from an oak tree, just as he was running under it, and smacked him in the head. Fortunately, a good Samaritan, never identified, came across him and called for help quickly enough for the injured man to be saved, although he was never quite the same, and had to medically retire from his mentally demanding career. In a terrible twist of fate, when the Samaritan used the victim's phone to try and reach his family to let them know what was going on, he somehow accidentally forwarded several compromising photos of the man in flagrante delicto with his administrative assistant. The now ex-boss had to move into a state-subsidized care home after losing wife and house in the ensuing divorce. As for Tracy, apparently her work value sans in-office sexual favors was not rated all that highly by other executives in the firm, and she ended up as a barista in one of those Starbucks where Maeve feared running into me. Tracy for some reason blamed Frank for her calamities, even though there was no sign it was anything other than a freak accident. Still, the police did check on him as part of their due diligence, and found eyewitnesses and security video that plainly showed him at a Foo Fighters concert on the night his former rival ate bark. The police also offered some interesting items in the daily police blotter in our local paper. One night, two men, who lived 5 miles apart, both reported bullets coming through windows of their homes and shattering their laptops, as they were surfing the web, both men mere inches from death. Because the two crimes were so blatantly similar, the police investigators dug just a little deeper, and were able to ascertain that both men were surfing the same website, one dedicated to philandering, when they'd been shot at. The case has apparently gone cold, since the recovered bullets were reportedly fired from one of the most common models of hunting rifle found in a state full of hunters. One of the more bizarre police blotter entries concerned a man whose vehicle was vandalized. He was a self-employed car detailer, and a white panel van was his rolling workspace. Photos provided by an unknown witness who just happened to snap a few shots and send them to the newspaper showed the large white sides covered with poorly drawn spray-painted images of anemic-looking tigers. The paper and the TV news programs that also ran this story had to blur parts of the images because they apparently showed the tiger's genitals. The words that filled in for the blurred visuals reported that said genitals were apparently portrayed as separated from the body, with much corresponding blood. Underneath the tiger on one side were the words tiger poop, and on the other side, daddy's tail dipped into the wrong honeypot. Oh, incidentally, on the night of the shootings, I was at a well-attended art gallery opening with the black daughter from the earlier date. Turns out another of her taboo fantasies was to have sneaky sex in a public place. On the night the van was vandalized, I was taking part in a late business meeting that included our city's most recent past mayor. Not that any police ever asked me for an alibi. I mean, why would they? So, what's up for my future now that I'm on the road to recovery? Well, after that final spousal support payment hits, I will have fulfilled all my obligations under the divorce decree, and Kelly Dewitt will no longer be my active attorney. When she learned that I actually went to an art display opening and was happy about it, she said that she would like our first date to be at a gallery as well. Of course, I don't expect she'll be asking me to pull her into an alcove and surreptitiously slip my white clock into her black kitty while we gaze out at the art and the crowd. Fortunately, I won't have to feel bad about that encounter when I'm with Kelly, because she made it very clear that, while she didn't want details, she also didn't want to go out with me until I had had sex with someone else first. She didn't want to be the one absorbing my first angry post-divorce duck. Her words, not mine. With that hurdle cleared, I hold out hope that happiness can still find me in our crazy world, where you can do so much for love that you end up killing that love. And there we have the final part of our story. If you enjoyed this 2-part story, leave a like and comment before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any story, and I'll see you next time.